Microphones are on. Everyone, thank you. Come and sit down. Thank you for that welcome. I just will say we were going to have Charmaine Higgins from Ventia, but she wasn't able to join us today. But we're very ably served by our panellists who are going to be talking about a holistic approach to mental health. So thank you everybody for being here.
Pleasure.
And we're really going to be delving into how best to support employees and what that means in a very holistic way, rather than a sort of one-size-fits-all approach to mental health. I might just give you a tiny bit more background on each of the speakers. We've got time. So Dr. Stacey Jenkins, she's the Executive Director of Safety, Security and Wellbeing at Sturt University. And Sturt has 4,000 staff and 40,000 students, so that's quite a big responsibility. Emmett Williams, he's the Partner and Chief Executive of Myzone. And Myzone is a fitness tracker and online social platform that rewards effort for physical activity. And that's his goal, is to really embed exercise as a key fundamental in workplaces for mental health. And Shruti Ganeriwala, she's the head of HR at Unilever, ANZ, and Unilever is one of the biggest suppliers of beauty and personal care, home care, nutrition, ice cream products. That'd be a bit of a benefit working there. And worldwide, they've got almost 150,000 employees and sales of $100 billion worldwide. So give them all a big round of applause. They've all got lots of responsibilities.
Haven't done anything yet.
So I wanted to start by asking you a really pretty broad question, which I think a lot of people at this conference are interested in, which is how do you effectively support employees to maintain a healthy work-life balance? It's something we are all aiming for. So I'll start with Stacey, with your staff, with your people that you support. How do you support them to have a work-life balance?
Look, I think that we try and adopt a holistic approach, because what is work-life balance means to me is quite different to what it might mean to Emmett, for example, and we might be at different stages in our lives. So we try and adopt a holistic program and a framework which looks at 4 pillars about place, culture, health and wellbeing. Yes, and so we look at that and then we break that down and try and offer a range of initiatives and programs that will cater for different individuals' needs, basically.
And do you find those 4 pillars work well, and then you're having good uptake, from the staff and the students with that structure?
Yeah, so at the moment that's our structure for our staff. In regards to our students, we're currently doing a co-design program, so we're reaching out to find out what will suit for them. But at this stage, yes, and it has to be a bit organic, and it's constant communication and evaluation, and it might be pilot programs in certain areas to work out, is that working here or not?
Oh, that's so great that you're doing a co-design with the students as well, because I guess that will get so much more buy-in, won't it, if they feel like they've been part of developing that program?
100%, yes. So that
rather than having it sort of imposed on them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And Emmett, tell us a bit about what you do, your company, and why is exercise so crucial for mental health and wellbeing and work-life balance as well?
Yeah, we're certainly very biased towards exercise as being the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to this. In fact, there was a study that came out of the University of South Australia earlier in the year, and it was published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, and what that found was that exercise is 150% more effective as it relates to mental health than counselling and medication. So the proof is there. But the way we see it is a lot like a flywheel. Academics will reference it as the healthy bias. If you run one healthy behaviour, you are far more likely to run other healthy behaviours. And at Myzone, we have this flywheel that if we can get you exercising, you are far more likely to eat better. If you're eating better, you're far less likely to drink alcohol at night. If you do that, you're far more likely to sleep deeper, and if you do that, you're far more likely to wake up and do exercise again the next day, and the flywheel becomes this virtuous.
So the exercise is really the catalyst for that behaviour change
that's it, the
really,
impetus, absolutely, yeah.
Wow, interesting. That's a great approach, I think, seeing it as sort of a catalyst for behaviour change. And we can talk a bit more about the work that you're doing. But Shruti, tell us about Unilever, obviously such a big organisation, so many staff. What are the sort of things that you're looking at and offering your employees to help them get more of a work-life balance?
Thanks, Sophie. I think a couple of things from our perspective. A little bit like Stacey, you mentioned, we've got a lot of focus across 4 different pillars of well-being. So we've got our strategy, which is focused on physical, mental, emotional, and purposeful well-being. So we definitely have a holistic well-being strategy. But I'd like to talk about one big thing that we are doing over the last couple of years, which I think absolutely goes to maintaining a healthy work-life balance, which is we are trialing a 4-day week. So we've been trialing that in our New Zealand business for a while now, and we've had exceptional business results and exceptional employee engagement, well-being, etc. scores. And recently, late last year, we brought that to Australia, and we're trialing that now in Australia. And I think what's really interesting is it comes from that entire premise around flexibility. It comes from the premise that actually one size doesn't fit all, exactly like you said, Stacey. To everybody, well-being means different things.
Yeah.
And it comes fundamentally from the premise that we trust people to deliver their jobs and we measure them on output and not input. So I think while for a lot of years we've been doing work on physical well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being, but I think the place we've reached is that that's really important. But I think what we really want to tackle is how do we fundamentally change the design of work? Because a lot of feedback we still get in the industry is people feeling overwhelmed, people feeling burnt out, etc. And that's where a lot of our work on 4-day week. I can go on talking about 4-day week, but
so
probably I'll stop there.
It's very interesting. I would like you to just, hands up in the audience who likes the idea of a 4-day work week. Yeah, we've got lots of support in the audience. Lots of support. I'm interested to ask you, was it a bottom-up solution or a top-down one or both? Was it the employees asking for it and then Unilever saying, yep, let's give it a go in New Zealand and see how we go?
It's interesting. It's a little bit of both, but it actually interestingly came a little bit more top-down kind of a thing, because actually when we started it in New Zealand was late 2020. So 4-day week wasn't the biggest thing in the industry as it is now, whether, globally, UK, Australia, New Zealand, etc. It wasn't that big a thing when we were just coming out of lockdown. So we started in late 2020. But why did we start it? I think it came from this fundamental belief at Unilever that the world of work is changing, flexibility is changing. We've always prided ourselves in, being at the front end, in redefining things, in, leading for sustainability, etc. And we were doing that for many years, but when the pandemic changed things and everybody offered sustainability and it became an industry norm, which is amazing, the questions we asked ourselves is how do we lead?
Yes.
What's the next step for us? So I think it came a little bit from that.
That's so interesting.
And we haven't looked back since then.
Do you measure, you said that in the New Zealand pilot study of it, that there were good productivity results and good employee wellbeing results as well. But I'm wondering, did people feel like they had to cram more into those 4 days, and by the end of the 4th day, you feel so shattered that you spend the next day just recovering from the previous 4 days?
It's an excellent question. So obviously everybody probably is aware of this. The premise of 4-day week, I'll still repeat for the sake of consistency. The premise of a 4-day week is 100-80-100. So 100% pay for 80% of your time, as long as you maintain 100% productivity. So that's the premise. One thing we've been really careful about is it's not a compressed working week. So we are not saying that you need to do longer hours in 4 days, because we have a fundamental belief that actually that goes against well-being. Because to your earlier point, if I'm working 10, 12 hours in a day, I have no time to exercise or do other things on those days. So I think that has been really important for us. However, what we've been working on is how do I actually support you as an organization on finding that trapped capacity, being more efficient in our ways of working, how do we prioritize better, focus on work that delivers value, etc. But it definitely is not a compressed working week. We've been quite vocal about that.
Because so many companies are dealing with burnout at the moment. It's something that I go into workplaces and talk to teams about preventing burnout and recovering from burnout. And one of the things that people often who are feeling burnt out, they feel very overwhelmed with the responsibilities that they have. And so it's good to hear that you're not compressing everything into those 4 days, because otherwise you could feel a bit overwhelmed trying to think you used to have 5 days to do it, now you have to do it in 4. Yes. So that's so good, and I'm sure the audience would be interested down the track finding out how the results go in Australia and to see whether it's something that you stick with. So it's fascinating. So we've sort of touched on this a little bit, but I want to talk about managing stress and improving people's mental health, what the different things are that your organisations are doing for that, because that's so crucial to our well-being. You know, how we can manage. Stress is not going to go away; it's a fact of life. But how can you empower your employees, or what are you doing to help them manage stress? Whether it's the staff with their workloads or the students. So we'll start with you, Stacey. What sort of things in your programs help address that?
I think the number one thing that we focus on is flexible work practices, basically, and that is trying to be flexible with start, finish times and working out what working arrangements suit individuals. And we have such a diverse group working at universities because we're like little cities in themselves, and so we do need to be very flexible. And sometimes the academics too, they have a spike of workload at periods based on marking, etc., that they've got to do within 2 weeks to turn things around. So it is about just being flexible with that and giving them that autonomy to do that. And I think that's one of the main things for us, is that flexibility.
Okay. And Emmett, when you go into companies, how do you help convince people that exercise is really going to, I mean, you mentioned a great study from the Journal of Sports Medicine, but what's the most compelling arguments that help people go, oh wow, yes, that sounds like a great idea, we should focus on exercise to help our staff manage their mental health?
Yeah, look, we have all the stats in the world to prove that there is a positive benefit to exercise, but really what we've found, I've just come back from 10 years in America, and a popular survey over there is the Gallup 12 survey. More popular than it is over here for whatever reason. ENPS appears to be a popular one here in Australia. Anyway, the reason I bring it up is that one of the questions is, do you have a best friend at work, right?
Do you have a best friend at work?
And
right.
it's a key question in Gallup 12, and that question, surprisingly enough, has had a huge change. And the companies that we work with, what they're trying to do is, yes, think step challenges. We do something different to step challenges. That's another conversation. But putting employees in groups of 7 is most powerful, but not just doing it episodically once a year in one given month, but doing it every single month and changing the group every month. What that does is, it's almost like being at a dinner party where the host will say, okay, move tables now, or you're having dessert with a different group now. It forces bonds, and they're using exercise challenges to create those connections.
And just before we move on, I just wanted to ask, what do you do for those people who are not engaged with exercise to try to swing them over to see the benefits? Because not everyone is naturally drawn to that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that you know you should be doing it, but some people will put it at the bottom of their list, or they may not realise the mental health benefits. So,
yeah, look, we refer to it as the 4 E's. And so if you think of a continuum, Prochaska's trans-theoretical change model, you've got those in pre-contemplation, those in contemplation, preparation, action, then maintenance. And all the way over on the left-hand side, if they're in pre-contemplation, they don't even know that they have a problem. They don't know that they need to solve the problem of inactivity. And so at that point, it's about empathising. Once you can move them a little bit further to the right and they start contemplation, then it's about emotion and education. So that's storytelling and opening their eyes up to the benefit of exercise. And then when you get them exercise, it's all about enthuse. And really that is the habit cycle and releasing dopamine in the brain so that the behaviour becomes addictive in a good way.
Okay. The other thing I think, just on the point of exercise, sometimes, and I'm not sure with the programs that you have, but sometimes people can feel like you need to be, flogging yourself at the gym or doing an hour of cardio, but they don't necessarily recognise that there are benefits even from just taking 10 minutes out of your day to get outside and go for a walk, just from the neuroscience benefits of being outside and getting away from the screen, when you're so hyper-focused on something. Yep. So even recognising those small little sort of snacking of going and having a 10-minute walk can actually make a difference too.
Yeah, absolutely, and I speak on this later. The London bus study was the first study done around physical activity, and they had a look at the effect of being a bus driver versus being a ticket taker, where the ticket taker is walking around the bus all day, up the stairs, checking tickets and whatnot, and the bus driver had twice the chance of having a heart attack than the ticket taker did, and that was all incidental activity and moving around and standing up all day.
Great. And well, thank you for sharing that. And Shruti, just on the issue of managing mental health and stress, obviously you mentioned the 4-day week, but are there other initiatives that Unilever has in place to help employees manage stress?
I think I'll say two things here. One is, like a lot of organizations, we do a lot of work on, what is the support we are providing you in terms of, upskilling programs for our employees, for our line managers, upskilling on mental health. How do you, how do you track signs of mental stress as line managers? How can you support employees? So there's obviously a lot of work which is not unique to us. A lot of organizations do, but is really important work. But I think a second piece of work that we do a lot of work on is, from my earlier point of this fundamental belief that, yes, we can help manage the symptoms, but what we also want to solve for is the root cause. So how do I actually equip you to do your job more efficiently? So over the last couple of years, and this ties in really well with 4-day week as well, we've been doing a lot of upskilling on, how to be more efficient, what are the productivity hacks, which tools to use better, how do we run more effective meetings, because it all comes from this belief that I actually need to look at the design of work more carefully versus just, managing the problems at the face of it. I think I'll say that probably is a big area of focus for us.
That's so interesting. So rather than sort of applying like a Band-Aid solution once some people are already stressed and feeling overwhelmed, you've gone back to basics to say, how are we designing people's work days so that they feel productive and they don't feel overwhelmed and completely shattered by the end of the day? And is that something that, how have the employees responded to that sort of approach?
No, it's been really interesting. We've had a lot of uptake for it. I think our 4-day week and hybrid working and all of that together, so we haven't really launched it as this is a new Wellbeing initiative that we are launching. What we've done it as, getting ready for the 4-day week. How do you find 20% efficiency, 20% time to still maintain your productivity, etc. And that's been really good uptake.
That sounds great. And one thing, we're talking about mental health, and one question I wanted to ask you all was, how do we foster a workplace where people feel comfortable to talk about if they are having, mental health issues, if they are having concerns about their mental health? How do we make sure we don't have stigma or bias? And Stacey, did you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's a range of things we're doing because I don't think it's a one-stop shop sort of thing. So in sort of offer mental health first aid training, but we realise that only covers an element of it. Then there's the accidental counsellor training, vicarious trauma training as well. So it's a mixture, and we're developing a skills framework for our leaders, etc., to go, okay, who needs what training and that type of thing to equip them, because part of the issue is just expecting that the managers have that themselves in order to manage the stress of the burnout.
Making sure that the managers and the leaders are well are trained so that they can not only look after themselves, but then they know what to do if someone comes to them saying, I'm struggling.
Correct.
That's
but
so good.
I think also too, I don't want to say that we're there yet. This is evolving and organic, so please don't think we've got it perfect. But it is about coming to conferences and like this and hearing from others and go, oh, that's great, yeah, but trying to fit that into the strategy and framework that you feel is going to be right for your workplace.
And then I was listening to something interesting the other day where they were talking about leaders, leading by example. So making sure that the leaders feel empowered and are looking after their own mental health first, but then also having like a no wrong door approach to seeking help in the workplace. So whether that's, whether it's through coming to your manager, whether it's through peer support, whether it's through mental health first aid or the EAP. And so feeling like that no matter where you turn, there is someone, you'll get help no matter where you turn.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Like with our EAP provider as well, in the past, EAPs have just been considered that they're there for counselling, but in actual fact, it's about working with your EAP provider to go, well, for us anyway, in regards to, you've got manager assist, there's counselling, there's
much broader, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's webinars and like promoting that and making that staff aware about what those initiatives are. So
Great.
Just, the networking, so we are developing wellbeing networks as well amongst peers so that they can, there's just different avenues they can tap into.
That sounds so good. Good on you. And so Emmett, just when you go into workplaces to talk about exercise, do you find that there is still, and if people raise the issue of mental health, do you find that there is still some stigma involved in some workplaces, and how do you help them overcome that?
Yeah, what I'll say is that having spent 10 years in the US, coming back here, it was an absolute shift. I mean, it is so much more
That's nice
open
to
out
hear.
here in Australia and spoken of, and the athletes are referencing it, that it was absolutely fantastic. And of course, I'm going to answer this from a very narrow perspective of exercise, but what they've found is that, and this was a Harvard study, that strength training acts as an antidote to depression, and yoga and Pilates acts as an antidote to anxiety. So when we're prescribing exercise through the content that we provide and whatnot, that's the type of solution that they're looking for. That's
so good. And so if you do strength training and you do a bit of yoga as well, you've got both things sorted.
Right.
And that's excellent. And Shruti, tell us about at Unilever, how do you help the employees to feel empowered so that they can raise, if they've got mental health concerns, raise it with their managers?
I think I'll say a couple of things. Like a lot that Stacey's covered and other organizations do, we've got a lot of focus on prevention, and whether it's the mental health first aider training, training for line managers, etc. So a lot of focus on prevention, a lot of focus on support. So once we know what do we do to support our employees, EAP, other things, etc. But everything underpinned, like you said, by leadership and culture and leadership role modeling. And actually taking it to a place where leaders are comfortable sharing. We've had town halls where leaders spoken about personal journeys and their struggles with mental health, etc. So a lot of work on that. I think two other things I'll talk about is we're doing a lot of work internally on psychological safety. So we're doing a lot of training and upskilling, because again, we all are aware of it, but there's so much power in as an intact team to just think about psych safety and how as leaders we can build that culture where people can share things, and how it's my responsibility to build that culture. So we're doing a lot of work on that. And I think the other thing I'll say is it's also over the years become a lot of part of their language in our organization. So when we have line manager conversations, end of year reviews, etc., actually well-being commitments are a regular conversation we have on.
Yeah, so it's sort of embedded as a regular part of the language. I think that's so important because some of the teams and workplaces I talk to, I'll say, how often are you talking about well-being, or how often are you checking in with the staff and seeing how they're going? And it's great coming in, once or twice to do a workshop, but if you're putting out newsletters, if you're putting out regular communication with your employees, that's a touch point that you can use to check in with them and to remind them of all the services that you might offer. And just sometimes you need to have a number of reminders before someone will take up the use of a service or an offer. So thinking about where those touch points are, that you could be constantly just reminding the staff that these services are available. Excellent. So we've only got 5 minutes left. So I just wanted to briefly go to each of our panelists and really get them to sum up. The name of this panel was Holistic Approach to Mental Health and Wellbeing. So I just wanted to get each of the panelists to just touch on what they would like you in the audience to take away from this discussion. So we'll start with Stacey first.
Okay. I think with that, I think it is about making sure that you do, one of my takeaways and what we've learned is making sure that you are delivering a holistic framework, and you really do need to think about what that means for your business. And so don't assume that it's about discussing that with your staff, creating consultation groups, developing something together, because unless you've got that buy-in, it's never going to be effective. You could be offering something that nobody really wants. So
fantastic. So the co-design element and sort of reaching in to see what the staff really want and need.
Correct.
For the best chance of success. That's great advice. Thank you. And Emmett, so what would you like the audience to take away from the work you do and the results you've seen?
Yeah, I have the pleasure of working with US Congress and the UK Parliament. They use our platform for tracking exercise, and the reason they use our platform is because it aligns with the UN and the Sustainable Development Goals. So SDG number 3 is good health and wellbeing. The World Health Organization take that task. They've put together a guiding policy known as GAPA, Global Action Plan for Physical Activity, and what they're prescribing is 150 minutes of moderate activity or 75 minutes of vigorous activity, or a blend of the two. They are not prescribing 10,000 steps, as I alluded to earlier. And because we're the only ones that really truly measure on that, and everyone else is out measuring on steps, that's why those two groups aligned with us. And I guess that if you do have SDG goals internally, then it makes sense to measure what matters.
And so before we move on to Shruti, can you just explain, you say, so you don't measure steps, how do you measure what exercise people are doing in the work?
Yeah, in 1 or 2 lines, we measure heart rate, and then we give you points. So the higher the intensity, the more points per minute. And because if you're super fit and I'm unfit, and you suggest to us that we need to do star jumps to get up into a high zone, super fit Sophie over here needs to do more per minute to get up into that zone, and that acts as a golf handicap, if you will, and it democratises effort. And once you've democratised it, you can then socialise it.
Okay, fascinating. And Shruti, just last thoughts for the audience of what you would like them to take away in terms of what you're doing at Unilever to really support your staff in that holistic way.
I think my only last thought will be to fundamentally look at the design of work and whether nobody should come in, if there's work-related stress that we are helping create because of the way work is designed, because there are inefficiencies in the system, etc. While we should absolutely help people manage the stress, what can we do to fundamentally remove that from the design of work is one thing I'll say. And sorry, I'll say a second thing.
No,
which is
fascinating.
I think I'll say a second thing, which is around how do we make sure that we help people bring their full selves to work. So at Unilever, we do a lot of work on helping people carve meaningful and purposeful careers and bring their purpose to work. Because I think we have to move away from the terminology of work-life balance. And work is a different thing and life is a different thing. But how does that merge together? And how do we help people bring actually their purpose to work and drive meaningful careers?
Fantastic. We'll give them all a big round of applause. That's been a fantastic discussion. And are you all around for a bit longer if people want to get a bit more information about anything you've spoken about? Great. All right. All our panelists will be around for the rest of the day. So give them another, come on, that wasn't much of a round of applause. Come on, give them a good round of applause. All right. Thank you for having us. And we'll be all around today. So hopefully we can catch up with you later. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Sophie.